We will begin this event by acknowledging that we are working on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, there have been Aboriginal peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, and Chippewa peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions that Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made, both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. On November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women began the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. December 10th ends this important time with the International Human Rights Day. Today, December 6th, we come together as it is National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. On December 6, 1989, 35 years ago, a gunman walked into a class at École Polytechnique and separated the men from the women. He then declared, "I am fighting feminism," before beginning a 20-minute shooting spree targeting women. By the time the gunman turned his weapon on himself, the promising lives of 14 young women were violently cut short. This senseless act of targeted violence shook our country and led the Parliament to designate December 6th as the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. These women meant something. Their lives mattered. They left behind grieving parents, siblings, partners, friends, and so many more individuals they touched along the way. We will now take time to remember the women who lost their lives because they were female. We honor each of these women with a red rose. Anne-Marie LeMay, born 1967. The 22-year-old was in her 4th year of mechanical engineering. Anne-Marie Edward, born 1968. The 21-year-old was a chemical engineering student. She loved outdoor sports like skiing, diving, and riding, and was always surrounded by friends. Annie St. Arnaud, born 1966. The 23-year-old was a mechanical engineering student, lived in a small apartment in Montreal. Her friends considered her a fine student. She was attending her last class before graduation that day. Annie Turcotte, born 1969. The 20-year-old was a materials engineering student. She was in her 1st year and lived with her brother in a small apartment near the university. She was described as gentle and athletic. She went into metallurgical engineering so she could one day help improve the environment. Barbara Daigneault, born 1967. The 22-year-old was a mechanical engineering student. She was to graduate at the end of the year. She was a teaching assistant for her father, Pierre Daigneault. Barbara Klecznik-Fedayevich, born 1958. The 31-year-old was a 1st-year nursing student. She arrived in Montreal from Poland with her husband in 1987. Genevieve Bergeron, born 1968. The 21-year-old was a 2nd-year scholarship student in mechanical engineering. She played the clarinet and sang in the professional choir. In her spare time, she played basketball and swam. Helen Colgan, born 1966. The 23-year-old was in her final year of mechanical engineering and planned to do her master's degree. She had 3 job offers and was leaning toward accepting one from a Toronto area company. Maurice Lagunier, born 1964. The 25-year-old was the only non-student killed. She worked in the budget department of the engineering school. She had recently got married. Maurice Leclerc, born 1966. The 23-year-old was in 4th year metallurgy, had 1 year to go before graduation, and was one of the top students in the school. She was the first victim whose name was known, and she was found by her father, Montreal Police Lieutenant Pierre Leclerc. Maud Havlernick, born 1960. The 29-year-old was a second-year student in metallurgical engineering and a graduate in environmental design from the Université du Québec à Montréal. Michelle Richard, born 1968. The 21-year-old was in second-year metallurgical engineering. Natalie Croteau, born 1966. The 23-year-old was a graduating mechanical engineer. She planned to take a 2-week vacation in Cancun, Mexico, with Helene Colgan at the end of the month. Sonia Pelletier, born 1961. The 28-year-old was a mechanical engineer student and the head of her class. She had 5 sisters and 2 brothers. She was to graduate the next day with a degree in mechanical engineering. She had a job interview lined up for the following week. This important day is also about honoring those who have experienced gender-based violence. We all have a role to play in creating a culture of respect and taking meaningful action to ensure that tragedies like l'École Polytechnique de Montréal never happen again. Thank you for joining us as we come together as a community to speak out against all forms of violence against women and its impact on victims and their families and friends. As a community, we need to continue our work together to speak out against and raise awareness about gender-based violence. The last rose, a white one, recognizes the many women who have lost their lives due to violence. Every 6 days, a woman in Canada is killed by her intimate partner. Those women mattered. You taking the time to join us today demonstrates a great amount of dedication towards the work that our community does to support the women and girls that are facing gender-based violence. Thank you for your support and joining us. Have a peaceful day.